Hi, I'm Susan Petersen, the CEO of Freshly Picked, and here is 5 things you didn't know about Freshly Picked. I started Freshly Picked when I was 30. I was a new mom. I had a 2-year-old and a baby. I wanted soft sole baby moccasins for my son, and I couldn't find any, so I just started sewing them myself, and Freshly Picked was born. One of the most asked questions I get is how I chose the name Freshly Picked. When I first started sewing stuff and I was getting ready to start my Etsy shop, I was out for a walk one morning, and we were in Florida for some reason, and I walked by this prickly pear bush, and I was like, I'm gonna call my company Prickly Pear. This is gonna be it. So I went home that night, did all my stuff, and at the time I was like, had young kids, so I would like put my kids to bed, and then I would like work on my business stuff at night. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna open my Etsy store. It's gonna be called Prickly Pear. And I went to go open it, and Prickly Pear was already taken. Someone else had already had that good idea. So I just started messing around with like variations of fruit, and I don't know, Freshly Picked just came to mind, and I picked it, and it stuck, and it was available. And so a couple years later, I was like, I knew I was gonna make it big. So I thought I could change it now, because I hadn't made it big yet, but just decided to keep it. And if we had $1 for every time someone you thought we were like a produce company, we wouldn't have to sell moccasins anymore because we'd be so rich. When I started Freshly Picked, I had gone to a garage sale before my son was born, and I bought like a bag of scrap leather. And then when he was born, I decided to try my hand at making baby shoes. And so I had like this huge, it was like one of those yard bags, like the black garbage bags full of scrap leather. And so I made my first pair of moccasins. I put them on him. At the time I had my Etsy shop, which was pretty unsuccessful, and then an equally unsuccessful blog. I put them on my blog, and I was like, look what I made. And people were like, I'll buy that. And I mean, I was getting like 30 visitors a day. So 7 out of 30, I thought, this feels like it's gonna be the thing. So I started making and selling them. I used all my scrap leather, and I'd never run a business before, so I didn't save any of my scrap leather money. I was spending it as quickly as it was coming in. So I went to the leather store to get more leather, and I thought leather stores worked like fabric stores where you could buy like half a yard or a yard, but they don't. They work like you have to buy the whole cow, and the whole hide of leather was $200, and it felt insurmountable at the time. So at the time, my brother had a window installation business, and I convinced him to give me all his old windows, and I spent nap time just out in the yard banging out the glass out of the window. And the end of the month, I took all those window panes to a scrapyard, and I got enough money to buy my hide of leather. So that was like my first investment into the company. When I first started, the moccasins were doing great, and I'd always told my husband, like, hey, if I can figure out that one thing, I know I can make a business out of it. But they were selling sporadically, and I had raised the prices a couple times, so they were selling good, but I still needed a lot of cash. And so I started making mouse pads. We have one here. So I started making mouse pads. This is actually a leather mouse pad. You can see our old logo here on the back. And we would just cut these out. My husband made a die, and then we would tape it off, and we would paint with spray paint. I'm not joking. And then condition them. And I would sell these for $35. They sold like hotcakes. I remember once Anthropology reached out, West Elm reached out, like everyone wanted to sell them, but I didn't want to be a leather desk goods company. I wanted to be a baby moccasin company. So as soon as later on that year is kind of when the business really started to take off. And so we retired the mouse pads. And actually my husband, that was his job at Freshly Picked, was he was making the mouse pads. So when we retired the mouse pads, he was actually my first fire. So he no longer works at Freshly Picked. In 2017, we also did our first license, and our first license was Care Bears, and Care Bears was really special to me. So my son Gus, who I started sewing the shoes for, he's always had an affinity for Care Bears. He had like this little pink Care Bear that he carried around with him always. In fact, I had to buy 2 of them so I could wash it. And so when we got our first Care Bears license, I was super excited. Since then, we've done Disney, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Disney princesses. A fan favorite this year was we did Gilmore Girls. We love doing licenses, and we print all of the leather here in-house in Linden. Check back in November, second week of November, because we are bringing Care Bears back.